on, and some of the legislation which you were responsible for as a member or as chairman of those committees?
I would be glad to. There's one thing I would like to do. I would like to lead into that by saying something about my last 2 years in the Congress that had to do with the Joint Committee.
Oh, yes.
We had a very able, capable man in the House of Representatives by the name of Richard Bowling from Missouri, Congressman Richard Bowling. He and I were friends for many years. He was one of the top men on the Rules Committee, which is one of the most important committees in the Congress because it's the go-ahead or stay-back command for any piece of legislation. You have to get a clearance for the Rules Committee. And he wanted to be Speaker very bad. He had a irresistible urge to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives, which of course is an honorable goal for anyone to want to be. I never aspired to it because, well, for many reasons. I guess I wasn't egotistic enough to think that I could be a Speaker. But anyway, he got himself a special committee appointed to study a reform of the Congress. The papers were always yelling for reform. The Congress should reform itself. It's ineffectual and all that. Well, they've reformed themselves all right, but change is not necessarily reform. And they've done more changing than they've done reforming. And they've almost reformed themselves into chaos, as I mentioned a few minutes ago in the Congress, as far as procedures concerning jurisdiction. Now, Richard Bowling wanted to be the Speaker. And he had this special committee appointed to study how we could reform the Congress to make it more efficient. And part of that was based on his real interest in reform, and part of it was based on his ambition to be Speaker, because he conceived the idea of destroying the Joint Committee. He knew that I was leaving Congress, and he knew that Craig Hosmer was leaving Congress. And so he thought, well, now's a good time to spread the red meat around with some other committees. In other words, the red meat of power in a committee is jurisdiction. And if you get more jurisdiction, you've got more red meat of power, you see. And so he thought, if I can give some of this jurisdiction to 4 or 5 committees, I can get the members of those committees behind me for the speakership. So he set up this committee and studied it. And after 2 years, he came to the floor with a piece of legislation which destroyed the Joint Committee, among other things. It destroyed the Joint Committee. And I won't go into all the other things it did because it would take too long. But when I saw that, I went to him and I said, Dick, I said, I'm going to have to fight you on this bill. I said, I've been on this Joint Committee since it started in 1946. And I said, it's done a good job. And I said, its jurisdiction is cohesive. They know all about it. It's not split around. And I said, the way this bill of yours is, you're going to give some to the Science and Technology Committee. You're going to give some to the Interior Committee. You're going to give some to the Foreign Affairs Committee and some to the Interstate and Foreign Commerce Committee. And I said, you'll spread the jurisdiction to the point where it'll be a nullity. The program cannot go forward unless it's looked at as a whole. And I'm going to have to buck you on this. Well, he said, go ahead, Chet. He said, you have to do what you have to do. And I said, well, I have to do this. So I studied the bill, and I found an Achilles heel in it, in the bill that he'd drawn up. And the Achilles heel was that he cut all the committees except 3 or 4 of the big committees, like appropriations and the Tax Committee, the Ways and Means Committee. He cut them down to 27 members. Well, a lot of those committees were 35 and 40 members. And of course, if he cut them down to 27, where would the residue of those committee members go? They would lose their committees that they'd fought for and had gotten on and so forth. And so when I found this Achilles heel in his plan, I very quietly got the word spread to some of the young members I said, what are you going to do when this goes? So they were all for reform. They were all, going to go behind the bowling bill. And I said, did you read this on here? I said, you're on such and such a committee. And I said, you're the 26th or 30th or 35th member on it. I said, all these committees are cut down to 27 members. And I said, where are you going to go? Well, that word spread like wildfire, especially among the new members, that were so gung-ho for reform. And so when the bill came to the floor, I led the fight against it. We set up under Julia Hanson, who was a member of the Ways and Means Committee from Washington, a woman, a very smart woman. We put up what we called the Hanson Substitute. We made a new bill, Hanson Substitute, and we took a lot of the bad stuff that he had in his bill, the political stuff that he was using for his own advantage, out of, we took that out, including the dismemberment of the Joint Committee. And make a long story short, to say that the Hanson Substitute bill was accepted and the bowling bill was killed. So I went to him after it was over and I said, well, I'm sorry I had to do this to you, Dick, but I said, you're hitting me where I live. I said, I've lived there for 28 years, and I said, I know it's done a good job. He said, well, that's all right, Chet. He was a pro. He said, that's all right. He said, when you and Craig are gone, he says, I'll do that. So this was about, 2 years. That was in my last term, as I remember, the first part of my last term that bill was brought to the floor, and we killed it. Then I got to thinking, I've got to do so. I know he's going to do this. One way or another, he'll do it without me here to fight it and without Craig here to fight it. On the Republican side, why, knowing Dick Bowling and his astuteness and his cleverness and his brains and everything, he'll get it done because he wants to be Speaker of the House. So I said, the best thing I can do, I think, is to take care of some of the problems that we've had in the Joint Committee. I said, for instance, we've always been criticized because the division of licensing and registration was part of the Joint Committee, which was a promotional, an agency to promote the use of it. And so there was always this criticism. Well, I knew that we had isolated this under Harold Price, who was the head of it. We had isolated this from interference by the Commission. And we did it deliberately. We had them in an executive session, and you may have been to some of these, I don't know. Yes. But we said before the licensing and regulation, I said registration, regulation. Yeah. Oh, yes. Regulation division, I said, is countermanded. Any decision they make in the way of rules and regulations are what was the other? Regulation and licensing, I said, that you disagree with on the committee. I said, we want to know about it. And we want to know about it from you, Mr. Price. And we want to know it from you, Mr. Seaborg. I said, because this is a very touchy area. And we don't want a good rule or regulation overridden by the Commission, unless there is just cause. And all we ask you to do is to bring that dispute before us. And we got a commitment from Harold Price, and we got a commitment from whoever was chairman then. I think it was Seaborg. I'm not sure. That they would do that. Now, sometimes, and there was differences of opinion, and sometimes we would decide with the Commission, and sometimes we would decide with the Division of Regulation and Licensing. And thereby we tried to give that regulatory body the independence that it should have, apart from being overruled by Spears, as every other regulatory agency in government has, and there's 7 or 8 or 9 of them, and like FPC and SEC and all the rest of them, So I said the first thing I'm going to do is to reorganize the Commission to have a one-man head of it, because Dixie Lee Ray had destroyed the function of the 5-man commission. It couldn't work. It didn't work because she was an autocrat. She was a smart woman, but she was She was not a part of a 5-man commission. She was a one-woman dictator, and she got Ben Hollingsworth, and she got Apodaca, and she got Jim Ramey when he came up very upon it. And she did her own thing, which she had to do, and so I said, the time has come now when we've got enough background of establishment in the function of the committee that a one-man person should come in there, and we get rid of these commissioners. And many of them had been appointed were not the caliber of commissions that we had in the early days. I think you will agree with me. They were political. I could name some of them, but I won't.
Yes,
they were political, and that came about mostly under Nixon, I'm afraid.
That was an unfortunate thing. Because,
and so you didn't have that, and the appointment of Dixie Lee Ray destroyed the function of the commission as it had functioned successfully for so many years. So I thought we'll put a one man there, and he'll be answerable. He'll be answerable to the committee. So that was when this man was brought over from space. What was his name that took the head of IRDA?
Yes, I know.
You know who he is. Well, I don't make a difference. You know who he was.
He was actually, he went from space, and he was actually
the head of
the National Academy of Engineering for a year, and then he went to IRDA. And his name was slips me. I'll
well, it doesn't make a difference, but you know the incident.
Yes.
And so because then I figured we'd gotten past the time when you needed a commission. We'd set the ground, we'd set the rules and everything like that. And besides, the commission had deteriorated due to the wrong kind of appointments, not the good, capable men, diversified skills, but too many of the other kind of people, and I won't mention any names. Some of them are nice men and all that, but it had gone down. So I thought the first thing I'll do, I'll set up the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, patterned after all the other regulatory commissions. And I did this very carefully. I got Johnny Reich, borrowed him from the lawyer from the commission. He knew more about the Atomic Energy Act than any 10 men in Washington. I got him, borrowed him for a year. And we worked that out, and we set up the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Now again, that depended upon the appointment of good people. But your commission is all multiple. Your regulatory commissions are all multiple, and you have to have good men or you don't have a good show. And we didn't get some good men on that later on. But we did have, we removed the naders and the others from criticizing us for regulating ourselves, you see. Then on the IRDA, energy was beginning to be known, and I was very much interested in energy, as you know, as being the key to our existence as a nation. That was one of the reasons why I fought so hard for the peacetime application of the atom to making electricity, because that was the bedrock of our civilization. And so I set up the IRDA to have jurisdiction over all energy: coal, oil, gas, solar, fusion, and atomic energy. The research and development of it. And it made sense. And it functioned. Because if you were looking at an overall budget, you could say, well, we can't put $100 million in solar because it's a long-range thing. We can put some in it. We can put some research and development in it, but in accordance with its span of years to bring it to the point where it's economical, we'll give it a little bit, but we'll give some more to the Clinch River breeder reactor or something that is more attainable in the next few years. And so I put all of that in IRDA, and it worked. And you had all energy there in one thing, and you could look at it, and then the Energy Committee in the Senate is looking at everything in it, because it's now been put in the Department of Energy, but it was put over as an entity. See, it wasn't dispersed; it was put over as an entity. So, under the power of reorganization of the Government Operations Committee, I told Mel Price, I said, "Do you want to be chairman?" He said, "Well, yes." He said, "Whenever you I don't want to push you out. I said, well, I'm thinking about taking over the chairmanship of the, it had come up because Dawson had died. This was about 4 years before. Because I've got some things I want to do, and that was some of the things I wanted to do, see. And so I nominated him to be, it was coming up, and I nominated him, and that was why he became chairman of the Joint Committee, because he'd fought with me for all these things I'd fought for, and been a good loyal man and everything like that. And I knew I was going to be here maybe 3 or 4 years, you see, and I wanted to get some of these things done that I thought would be helpful. And so I took over the chairmanship, but I kept my spot as the senior man on the Joint Committee, and I attended it just as regularly, but I let Mel be the chairman, you know. And he and I had always worked together from the time we signed that report there.
Yes.
Back in 45, when we signed that report. We'd always sat beside each other in the old Military Affairs Committee, and then we sat beside each other in the Joint Committee for all those years, 28 years that I was there, see. So anyway, I put that as part of my work to do in the Government Operations Committee. Now I wanted to kind of explain why, because I knew the Joint Committee was going to be destroyed. I knew Bowling would succeed in it, because there wouldn't be anybody there that was smart enough and tough enough to fight him. And I knew it was going to be destroyed. So I wanted to concentrate its functions in what I thought would be enduring entities. And they have been enduring, although ERDA has been absorbed by the Department of Energy, and which was created after I left, you know. All right, now let's get back to to my work on the Government Operations Committee. When I first went to Congress, I was put on the Committee on Executive Expenditures, which was the precursor to the Government Operations Committee. And when the La Follette-Mulroney Act was passed in 1946, they reduced 54 committees into 17. And that was when they put a lot of stuff in the executive expenditures, and we renamed it the Committee on Government Operations, because that really was what it was, because we had jurisdiction over the function of every executive agency, bureau, department level or other, to investigate them in regard to their efficiency and economy of operation. And we also had the subpoena power, which only 1 or 2 committees had. The Ways and Means Committee had the subpoena power on matters pertaining to taxes. And any other committee that wanted the subpoena power would have to go to the floor and get a House resolution passed, giving them the subpoena power for a specific investigation. Limited, see. But it had the all-embracive subpoena power. It is like I said, it was like the old woman's Mother Hubbard. It covered everything and touched nothing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I with that subpoena power, I could do things. I could get things done. And I did get things done over the years. Part of it also had the jurisdiction over presidential reorganization plans. And I handled 75 presidential reorganization plans during my years on there, which was before the Joint Committee was created, you see. And during all that time I was on there, and I actually ran the committee because Dawson had a hemorrhage, a cerebral hemorrhage, and he couldn't handle the gavel. And so he asked me, Mr. Holifield, will you take the gavel today? I've been sick, I don't feel like it. And so I was running that with 57 staff people, and I was running the Joint Committee with the numbers of staff people that we had there, whatever they were, I forget now what they were, counting all the staff and the secretaries and stenographers and so forth and so on. But anyway, I was carrying both of those loads. Now, part of that load was that it had the power to create bureaus, agencies, commissions, and even departments. And so as the top man on the subcommittee on reorganization and military affairs, I had a pretty good chunk of red meat to gnaw on.
Yes, that was powerful.
Because I could look into any military, and I could help get the Uniform Federal Catalog going, which I did. And also, in 1947, I handled the making of the GSA, the General Services Administration, to put the function of housekeeping in one executive, in the place of having it spread throughout every committee in the government. That was 47. Wait a minute. 47. 47 may have been the amalgamation of the Department of Defense, and 49 may have been the General Services. I may have those twisted. I kind of
approximately in that time span.
But it was. I handled the legislation on setting up the present Department of Defense. I wasn't chairman then, but Dawson had this cerebral hemorrhage, and the Democrats were in power, and I was next in line. So I handled the legislation on the floor that put the Department of Defense together, and the CIA was part of that. We set up the CIA to concentrate, to correlate and concentrate the clandestine intelligence gathering and screening, and then hand it to the president. You see, not the State Department handing it from one of their embassies, and somebody in the War Department from one of their posts or something like that, but it all had to come to the Central Intelligence Agency. It was what it was, Central Intelligence Agency. And from every source, from every embassy, and every private person that went overseas at the behest of the president to do something like that was filtrated in, and then it was all screened and handed to the president in a complete intelligence estimate in the place of fragments coming to him, and some of it not even getting to him. See. Then the General Services Administration took over all the leasing of lands and the selling of government property, which had been a shambles before that, and that was good. Then they wanted a Department of Transportation, and I handled that, and that's one of the. Let's see, is it on this wall? No.
Let's see, it's there.
Yeah, there's the General Services.
That's right. And there's Housing and Urban Development.
Housing and Urban Development was,
I think
and the Department of the Air Force was put into the Defense Department and so forth. Well, anyway, I created those two cabinet levels, and no other congressman ever created two cabinet level departments of government. And besides these auxiliaries, the GSA, and we had also jurisdiction over the General Accounting Office, which was the investigating arm of the Congress, you see, for any dollar spent. And we had the jurisdiction over that, and I worked with Elmer Stotts just like that over the years. He was a grand public servant for 17 years.
Very effective.
Very effective man. And so that was some of the work that I did on the 75 reorganization plans, the two cabinet levels, the GSA, the amalgamation of the Defense Forces, and the setting up of commissions. I set up I have to get up here and look. Report of the Commission on Government Procurement. and he was the head man on the Republican side, and he and I worked just like Craig and I worked together. And I set that up, and he spent a couple of years on that. And then in order to keep that procurement commission's recommendations, which was 165 ways to improve the function of government, from dying, I set up the Office of Procurement Policy. Don Soule, who was the staff director of procurement, is the appointee of Reagan on that now, and doing a good job. To ride herd on the commission's recommendations, and to see that the agencies followed them. You see, in other words, and I knew that as long as Elmer Stotts was there, he would be followed, because we got him on the procurement commission. I had him put on the procurement commission. You see, because it was his function anyway, was looking at certain dollars, expenditure of dollars, and so forth and so on in the government. You see, so those are some of the things that I did on this other committee, just to keep myself busy.
Yes, well, that's a tremendous list of accomplishments there, and I am amazed at the versatility, because it involves so many different parts of the government, and all very important functions. And in each particular case, these things certainly function much more effectively after they were properly organized, because I could imagine the chaos that there must have been in some of these places with all kinds of different sources of authority and authorizations.
Well, it kept me busy.
Yes.
So I put in a lot of time on the government operations that the people in the Joint Committee didn't know about.
Yes. Well, frankly, this is much of this is new to me. Although I knew some of these things, I didn't know all of these that you had participated in. So, well, this is as I say, this is a fascinating recital of things that were accomplished. You may think you spent a long time in the Congress, but there was so much that has come out of all of these years that it sounds like you must have spent 132 years instead of 32 years in the Congress. Yeah.
If you would ask my wife how many Saturdays I'd work out of the year, why, she'd tell you most of them. I'll tell you, I had to keep up, and I never got home before 8 o'clock at night. I was always working, and it wasn't work to me. It was a pleasure. It was something I was interested in, and I felt I was doing some good. And if I had my life to live over, I'd do it the same way. Yeah. I wouldn't change it.
Well, this is certainly a remarkable recital of a public-spirited citizen who has devoted his life to public service, Chet, and I certainly want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about these things and actually get them down on videotape, so people in the future will be able to refer to this and actually perhaps settle a great many arguments and give us a great deal of insight into how to solve some of our problems in the future. Thank you again, Jeff.
I hope it'll be worthwhile.
Bye.
Sure.